I want to go back to 1956 and Dwight David Eisenhower, who needed the Catholic vote badly. Cardinal Spellman was giving it to him. You need to hire a Catholic. And they literally went out and got a guy they thought was somewhat conservative, and Mr. Brennan. Well, that, changed over the years. But we have many, many times, back to the middle Supreme Court of the 1880s, we have many, many times gone through this, haven't we?
Well, many, many times gone through what? If it's gone through election year vacancies, not really. There have been 8 by my count. One of them was the Brennan vacancy created by Sherman Minton, whose health failed him. Eisenhower recessed a point to Justice Brennan. Then the Senate handily confirmed him in early 1957. That was not controversial, but we've come a long way since those days.
Yeah.
Those days back in the 1920s when justices were confirmed basically on the day they were nominated. It's a different world.
It's a different world today. And what world would you expect to see here as a president moments ago says he's taking the line of conservative Republicans, let's go, let's get this done by the election. Can they accomplish that?
Well, they have enough time. I mean, they'd have to rush it through, but the Democrats, so they have a few monkey wrenches, they can slow things down, but not much really. So if they get their 50 votes plus Pence, they'll be able to confirm a justice pretty much any time before the election or after the election. It all hinges, I think, on whether or not how many Republican senators decide that it's just too hypocritical to vote to confirm a Trump appointee at this point.
Russell,
nominee at this point, given what happened to Merrick Garland, back in 2016.
There's been some discussion by some Democrats that if Republicans push a nomination and confirmation through, they would possibly talk about packing the court if Joe Biden does win the presidency. How realistic is that threat?
Well, I think it's a lot more realistic than it was a couple of days ago. I was quite skeptical of that, figuring that you don't tamper with institutions that lightly. But I must admit, I think there's going to be a lot of pressure to counteract a midnight appointment, is what this would be, late in the election season by a president who, you'd have to say, it looks like he's not going to get reelected. So it's not a pretty picture. And I think the Democrats will come back if they have the Senate and the House and the White House. They're going to seriously consider doing something to offset it.
So what would that look like? I mean, this was tried by FDR back in the day, but what would a court packing kind of measure proceed as likely? Well,
Roosevelt's was a little more duplicitous. Roosevelt said, I want the authority to appoint another judge for any appellate judge over the age of 70. This is quite direct. It just says the court has been at 9 since 1868, 1867.
Yeah.
We're going to increase the size to 11.
Well,
that just gives a lot of work to the Supreme Court carpentry shop, but that's about all that's entailed.
This is critical. This is just critical, though. The Supreme Court Act of 1869 got us to 9 members. Right. Is that sacrosanct? Is that just something that's untouchable?
Well, the reason it's 9 is because at that point there were 9 circuits, and the justice's job back then was largely to serve as trial judge on what used to be called the circuit courts, trial courts. 9 circuits, 9 justices. That's the reason it went up and down. When the court locked it in at 9, there's nothing magic about that number. It's come to be regarded that way. And most state Supreme Courts are 9 or less. Most world common law courts are 9 or less. But an 11 member court can function, obviously.
So this is one final question, and this is just so important. You're not uncomfortable forgetting about conservative liberal with the idea of an 11-member court?
I am uncomfortable with it, but I think there's a lot of justification if the Republicans ram through this late in an election by a president who's clearly has no popular mandate whatsoever to impose a very conservative federal judiciary on the country. He ran on that and he lost the popular vote massively. So I think the court's legitimacy is already going to be in tatters if he gets another appointment, and it's just one more ratcheting down of the institution.